somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem.
This Amateur Radio Roundtable is brought to you in part by ICOM America. All right, good evening to everyone out there. Today is Tuesday, September 27th, and we gave you a little extra tonight. We gave you some music on top of our intro, so you know, gee, you got double for your money tonight. Anyway, welcome to Amateur Radio Roundtable. And we're on every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. That's 0100 UTC on Wednesdays. It's kind of funny how we're on Tuesday, but it's really on Wednesday on UTC. So it's a little confusing. But we've got several international people that follow us. Please go to our Facebook link up at the top of the website. Click on it. Join us on Facebook, and you'll get to see what's coming up on future shows and where we've been. And it's just a good ham radio hangout for you to post pictures and talk about ham radio. We're on WBCQ tonight, famous international shortwave station up in Monticello, Maine. I want to say hello to Robert. I'll call him Lord Robert. We named him that last week. Lord Robert up at WBCQ there in Monticello. He's putting our show on shortwave tonight. Hopefully we've got some listeners around the world tuned in tonight. Frank couldn't make it tonight. He was going to be with us, but something came up and he couldn't make it. I think Katie took a vacation day. I need to check and see how many vacation days she gets. We're pretty flexible around here, but I do need to check that to make sure that she's not abusing the off time there. So let's see, tonight we've got our friend from the editor of CQ Magazine, Rich Moison, W2VU with us. That's going to be, I think, interesting. We're going to talk about some of the things coming up in the magazine. And then stay tuned, a little bit after that, we're going to be going to the ARRL laboratory and talking to Ed Hare up in Newington, Connecticut. So let me see if I can get Rich in here. Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Good evening. How are you? Doing great.
I'm doing good here, and it looks like you've got your friend with you again tonight.
Yep.
All right.
My assistant editor here, Dougal.
Does your editor ever get in trouble there in the ham shack?
Well, he lets it be known when he's, not pleased with the way a QSO is going or something,
Oh, well, I've got a friend, Glenn Popel, down in Mississippi that has cats, and they get up on his workbench and steal parts and just scatter everything, so it's pretty tough. I was just wondering if hey, your cats may operate sometimes when you're not there.
That's right. You never know.
Well, let's talk about CQ.
Good about filling in the log, though. So.
It's not in the log. Well, I saw the digital subscription for CQ is out already, and the printed editions are going out for October now. You want to tell us what we're going to be seeing in there?
Well, October is our emergency communication special, and we've got a bunch of articles on different aspects of amateur radio emergency communication. Our primary focus this time around is on use of multimedia in terms of video, data, voice, basically whatever a group needs to fulfill its mission. And we've got 3-4 different stories on that. We've got a really incredible story, which we called 3 events, 5 cities, 1 week. It's about the Amateur Radio Emergency Service Group in Ohio, which in the course of 1 week over the summer, the end of July, was involved in 3 major events, starting with the Toledo Air Show, and then the NAACP National Convention in Cincinnati, and the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. And they also, as part of all that, had operations in Columbus and Akron as well. So they had to have people set up in 5 different cities to coordinate 3 close to simultaneous major events, including a national political convention, and they made it all come off seamlessly. It's a really great story. We've got the story of a couple of folks down in Texas who have put together a trailer for ham radio use for MCOM, and weak signal VHF, UHF as well when there's nothing happening, so they can take it to wherever they need it. A group in Washington State is doing something called iWarn, which is a fantastic idea for ways to let people help in an emergency, even if they don't have any formal training in emergency communications. As any of us who have been on the air during any kind of real emergency know, when something is actually happening, you get people coming out of the woodwork wanting to help. But if they haven't participated in drills, in nets, in training activities, sometimes they can be more of a hindrance than a help. And what do you do with people who sincerely want to help but don't have the training to be able to keep things moving efficiently? Well, this group in Washington State came up with something called iWarn, which is a situational reporting network. Basically, look out your window and tell us what you're seeing out your window. And you know, in the case of various, their big thing there is earthquakes. That's their major hazard, plus forest fires. And so they realize they can get a lot of information to their local public safety people who came up with this idea with them of more eyes on the ground. Look out your window, tell us, do you see damage? Do you see fires? Do you see smoke? Do you have power? And that is helping the emergency responders know how to marshal their resources and where the greatest help is needed. So it's a really, really great program and a great article. We've got, what else here? Good piece on a National Parks on the Air operation that a club put together that technically wasn't an emergency drill, but it turned out to really be an emergency drill because it's testing their opportunities to, their abilities rather, to set up on short notice in a temporary location and get on the air and be effective. We've got a couple of non-emergency stories. The Odd Couple of DXCC by Ed Richmond, W4YO, Tanu Tuva and Wrangel Island. If you want to know more about them, you'll have to read the article. We've also got a 3-pack of Morse code articles for those who are Morse enthusiasts. One on American Morse code, our heritage. It's not what we use on the air today. It's the telegraph code.
It's similar, but some of the letters are different, aren't they?
Yes, they are. For example, an L is a long dash. A C is 2 dots, a space, and a dot. So there are differences. We've got another article on the development of early telegraph keys. I don't know if you can see the drawings here very well.
Yeah.
The writer is also a very good artist. And project article on building your own keys with surplus parts out of different things. It's a very cool piece.
I think that will be a fun article to read. I've been following on Facebook. There's a lot of people that are designing and building their own keys, and they really look good out there.
Yeah, it's a great issue. We also have out our new calendar. Just came in. 15-month calendar from January 2017 to March of 2018. And all sorts of great pictures, as always, of people in their shacks, people in tents, people on hilltops, all sorts of great stuff showing the breadth of the ham radio hobby. And we're holding the price on that where it's been forever, $10.95 plus shipping. And those are in and available. If you've already ordered one, they're going out in the mail this week, I believe. And if you haven't, well, this is a great time to go to our webpage and order.
And you get 15 months instead of 12, right? Now, do you guys make a new calendar every 15 months, or do you do it yearly?
We do it every year, but we give you up until March of the following year in case you're a little slow in ordering. And we include in here major ham radio contests, lunar phases, eclipses, meteor showers, things like that are of use.
So have you got a big picture there, a different picture for each month? Let's look at a couple of them there, if you don't mind, if you're not secret.
Well, they are.
They are the secret, but you saw it here.
The secret right now. This is January. It's a scene out of the expedition down to the South Sandwich Islands last year. February is a collage of QSL cards collected by our QRP editor. All low power voice, in fact. I'm playing with low power voice right now. I just finished building this double sideband 40 meter transceiver.
You know, I started building one of those, and I've got to get back on it. It's so simple.
Yeah, fun radio, great receiver. I picked up some good shortwave broadcasters on it too.
Yeah.
And so let's see. We're contest station here. Field day station, I believe, here. Let's get that on camera. There we go.
Nice pictures.
Same guy who's on the cover. Enjoying radio by the pool.
Oh, yeah.
Before and after photo of this gentleman is a young ham many years ago and today.
Yeah. That one there interests me.
Who's on our September cover.
Yeah, that one there really interests me. I played around a little bit with microwave, but those guys really set some records there. Yeah,
this is 47 gigahertz, and he's up on Whiteface Mountain, New York, in the Adirondacks, and they set a new record between the U.S. and Canada, going up to another mountaintop in Quebec.
Yeah.
Another ham at her station. Two young hams. This was, I believe, during a contest.
Yeah.
Another nice station shot. And yet another. This, I think, is a motor. And this may be the outside of it.
So, Rich, you couldn't persuade them to put your operating picture in there?
We want people to buy the calendars.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, the calendar looks good. It really does. I need to get mine on order, and I'm waiting for the October issue to come in so I can read about these articles. I'm really interested in the Morse Code 3-pack that you talked about.
It's a great group of articles, and of course, Joe's got a cool column for his kit building. I gotta find it here because I'm already.
Joe always has a good article.
Yep. we've also got our homing in column on transmitter hunting this month. We're going to have a repeat of that in November. He's usually in there only quarterly, but he's going to have in November the results of the World Championships of Amateur Radio Direction Finding. And so looking forward to that. And, of course, I can't find Joe's column right now.
Well, Joe, on November 1st, I'm going to be in the Smoky Mountains, and Joe Eisenberg is going to put this show on all by himself. He's going to be the total cast, I think, that night, and he's going to do a whole series on kits.
Cool.
That's the reason we haven't had him on here in a couple of weeks, is because we're letting him save up all his, his information for, so he can, give it to us on November 1st. I'll be in the chat room. I just won't be in the video. But hey, let me ask you a question about that 40-meter double sideband that you built there. Mm-hmm. Did you build it from some kind of kit, or did you homebrew it?
This is from an Australian kit maker called Oz QRP, and it's covers like about what is it? I think 7250 to 7300, somewhere around that.
Yep.
You have a choice. You can get a lower range if you're outside the U.S. because the regions 1 and 3 in Europe, Africa, Asia, etc., don't have 7200 to 7300. So they have the option to go in the European and Asian portions as well for phone. I'm
working on a homebrew deal.
The calling frequency. So.
Just parts out of the junk box. We're going to homebrew it again. I had it working fairly well. The receiver was working well. The transmitter was working, but I wasn't real satisfied with it, so I scrapped it. And I'm gonna build another one, but this time I'm gonna take an Arduino VFO and put that Arduino VFO into it instead of having that little narrow range at 7200 to 7300 that you mentioned. So we're going to try it. That's something we're going to do on a show here probably maybe this winter. Mm-hmm. But it's a very simple radio, and I've seen videos of people making contacts with it, and it works really
I've
well.
made 2 so far, even with pretty bad conditions on 40 meters. It was a fun build, and if you want to read about building, in fact, we have an article in September CQ on building this very kit. Wasn't by me, but it was getting that in inspired me to get this and to build it.
Well, great. Well, Rich, I want to thank you for coming in the show with us again tonight. We're going to move on, I think, to our next guest here. And I'm looking forward to getting that magazine in the mail. Boy, is there any way you guys can kind of ship mine first? Did y'all do it alphabetically, or how do you do that?
Printer takes care of it for us.
Does he?
So.
Okay, well, maybe they all go out at the same time, but
I think they do.
I look for mine in the mail every month. Thanks again so much.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, we'll see you again here in a few weeks. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Enjoyed it. All right. That was Rich Morrison, W2VU. He's the editor of CQ Magazine. All right, so let's see. Let me make a couple announcements, and then we'll move on to our next guest here in just a moment. Let's see, where were we? Okay, for all our Shortwave listeners that maybe are tuning in, I always like to announce this. You know, we have a video show here on the internet, but since we've also gone shortwave, we don't want to forget about our shortwave listeners out there. Many of them, are shortwave listeners just like a lot of us were. That's how I started in ham radio 55 years ago as a shortwave listener. So it's a lot of fun, and I follow a lot of the shortwave Facebook groups, and it's really interesting to watch these guys picking up all these DX stations and getting QSL cards. And same thing I did years ago. In fact, I got QSL cards from Radio Moscow and Radio Havana, Cuba. And Hey, when I went in the Air Force, I got a top secret security clearance, and then sometime later they yanked my clearance and said, "Are you a ham radio operator? Do you talk to these places?" I said, "Well, not very often." And they took my clearance away about 2 weeks and talked to all my old neighbors, and then they gave it back to me. But shortwave is a great hobby if you're not a ham, and if you are listening and a shortwave listener, I would like to invite you to join us on the web. If you go to w5kub.com, w5kub.com, you can watch the show and also join in our chat room here. So we'd love to have you send us a signal report if you are listening tonight. And let's see, join our Facebook group. I need to mention that again. Okay, let's see. Let me get my next guest on the show here. So if you guys will just kind of stand by, we'll be back with you in just a second here. Take action and prepare now. Did you know September is National Preparedness Month? Set some time aside and review your emergency communications plan for air, land, or sea. Make sure your ICOM equipment is ready to go for any situation. The ID 5100A has taken innovation and mobility to the next level. With its touchscreen and internal GPS, this radio is a must-have while accessing any situation. The large 5.5 display responds naturally to the touch. DV-DV Dual Watch receives both FM-FM and FM-DV mode signals simultaneously. VS3 Bluetooth headset provides hands-free communications. And show your position, course, and speed with the integrated GPS receiver. Connect your Android to ICOM's most popular dual-band digital transceiver, the ID51A Plus. Filled with enhanced functions and digital features, you don't want to be without this mobile communication solution. Send and receive text messages and photos. Transfer data 3.5 times faster with DV Fast Data Mode. And communicate with the touch of your fingertips. Perfect for small spaces, the IC7100 base station is the ideal D-Star option for wherever you may be. Angled control head and touchscreen for quick, intuitive operation. It has a large internal speaker for clear digital audio and is perfect for multi-band and all-mode communications. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on ICOM radios. Okay, and we're back. So let's see. Boy, we got something exciting to talk about coming up here. I want to introduce our next guest. Let me see if I can put him on with me. There we go. I think that'll work. Our next guest is Ed Hare, W1 RFI, and he's employed by the ARRL, and he is the manager of the ARRL lab that you hear so much about. Ed has spent decades and decades in the areas of testing and test equipment. He's got a lot of experience there. He's written a number of articles on RFI, and you probably have seen those in QST magazine, and you probably, if you look through the ARRL handbook, you'll see some of those articles in there. He is one of the editors of the ARRL RFI book, and he's the author of ARRL's book on RF exposure. And that would probably make a good show some other night to talk about RF exposure and, how all these cell phones are, frying our brains. Ed's been very active in holding seats for amateur radio on various industry committees, particularly the IEEE. He's a member of the IEEE Standards Association and the IEEE Power and Energy Society. And he's also on the board of directors of the IEEE EMC Sorority. So, hey, I just want to say hello to a fellow IEEE person. Let me hold my plaque up. There you go.
Oh darn! I don't have mine handy.
You don't have yours, so there's mine right there. So just now it's official. So now we got two. We can do the secret handshake and everything. Ed, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm certainly pleased to be here. Although I have to confess, I'm feeling a little bit second rate. I don't have a cat.
Oh, really?
There's no cat here, so Rich has already one up on me. But I'm pretty convinced he is winning the gray in the beard competition. So
he may be. He might be doing that. But you know what? I don't have a cat either. I'd probably Kathy and I are probably allergic to them. So probably it's best we don't have one here. I don't even have a dog. Used to have some dogs, but they kept chewing the handle off the wheelbarrow and stuff like that. So I felt like it's just better not to have them.
Yep, understood.
So look, tonight let's talk about something. The reason I contacted you, I wanted to talk about this new AT&T AirGig that they're advertising, and I wanted to kind of get in a little bit about the new AirGig and what it is, what you know about it, because we're always looking for new ways to connect to the internet. And I don't know if that will become cheaper or if the whole price is about the same, but still it's kind of some new technology using some old, some old theory. That theory's been around a while, but they're trying to make it work. So let's start off and tell us what AirGig is.
Well, it's really interesting, Tom, because it was about a week ago AT&T did an announcement on the new AirGig system, and in that announcement they mentioned using broadband over power lines. Well, that's saying the B word in print right now is usually going to get a lot of amateurs pretty excited. And after that article appeared, we started getting calls, emails, concerns, amateurs thinking that broadband over power line had resurrected itself. Now, a lot of the older hams who've been around for the last few years probably remember what it was, but let me give a real quick background for any hams who might have joined amateur radio in the last few years. The BPL that concerns amateurs basically wanted to use HF and VHF spectrum for broadband signals on overhead power lines. Now, what ham has not looked at those overhead lines and thought long wire antenna? And sure enough, when those HF or VHF signals were placed on those lines, even if they were operating at the FCC's limits, we saw probably S9 plus 10 to 20 dB of noise along miles of power line across several megahertz of spectrum at a time. And so, of course, Amateur Radio, ARRL, was very, very concerned about BPL technology. Now, AT&T announced AirGig, talked about broadband over power line, so, of course, the concerns were fresh in everybody's mind, and we started hearing about it. We don't know a tremendous amount about the technology because it's still in trial. They're developing the system. Their patent on it, however, talks about using spectrum from 30 to 300 gigahertz. What they're essentially doing is they're putting what I would call a microwave signal near power lines. They're launching that signal as a surface wave down the power line. It's an old technique called G-line or E-line. It's been around. It's basically a single wire transmission line. And it can actually do pretty well at getting microwave energy from one point to another without losing too much of it by radiation. One of the articles I saw also mentioned possibly tying this in to some of the cellular broadband, so you might see some operation at 1.9 gigahertz as well. With all this in mind, what we decided when we looked at this, we also talked to a couple of the guys at AT&T who, although they told us they're under non-disclosure agreements, they confirmed our conclusion that this would not cause major interference problems, if any, to amateur radio. I mean, it basically poses the same interference threat as any Wi-Fi device, as any computer device. Naturally, you could have switch mode power supplies or something making noise, but it clearly is not the classic BPL that would concern amateurs.
Well, do you know where they stand on it? How long will it be before they get something out into a test market?
Well, one of the articles I read, Tom, said that they're deployed right now in 31 markets, although we don't know what they are. Now, this doesn't mean they're deployed fully servicing customers, but they're clearly doing something to try to experiment with this. I saw online a couple of pictures of different types of, quote, antennas that this would be using, so they may not be firmly locked in what they're doing, but the good news is this is not HF and VHF, the kind of broadband over power line that radiated pretty badly and caused some really, really significant interference problems.
Well, that's good to know because, I never had to put up with any of the BPL interference here in my area. We didn't have it, but I was always worried that at some point, it's going to hit and cover the United States, and it's going to affect all of us just terribly. But so I'm glad to hear that they're trying something different. So does this mean that the old BPL is pretty much a done deal? Have they discontinued it everywhere?
Yeah, in fact, this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about where BPL ended up, because it was certainly a major concern on the radar for amateur radio. ARRL promoted it pretty heavily in terms of its problems. I had gone off to about 30 different BPL areas and saw very, very similar things in most of them. The broadband over power line that used amateur spectrum caused some pretty significant interference. Now, probably the broadband over power line that was the biggest concern to amateurs was what they called access BPL. And this is where they wanted to use and did use those overhead power lines to conduct high-speed digital signals on HF and VHF, for a distance of maybe as much as a mile between the BPL repeaters they had to put on the lines. Fortunately, maybe the best way I could put this, of course, we had a lot of interaction with the FCC. We were looking to get them to write good rules that would prevent them from using the amateur bands, that would restrict the operation to fairly low levels, that would measure it correctly, and we didn't get a lot of headway with the FCC. In fact, the way I think I'd like to put it, though, is in that arena, we lost every battle, but we won the war. Because while this was going on with the FCC and on a regulatory front, I was also working this with a lot of the broadband over power line industry. My connections with the IEEE put me on a number of their standards committees, and in doing so, with working with the utilities and the industry, we found a number of people within that industry that realized for it to be successful, they had to address interference problems. So we had groups like HomePlug, which is one of the BPL specifications, design into their industry specifications provisions to not use the amateur bands. Now, that also got picked up internationally, where at the ITU level, the international standards for broadband over power line also do not use the amateur bands. And so what we found when we went out to some of these systems that were correctly notched, as they used to say they were notching out the amateur bands, we found that by not using the amateur bands, there was not interference problems involving amateur radio. Now, shortwave broadcast was still in some pretty serious trouble, but the broadcasters generally they weren't as active as ARRL in trying to protect their own interest. And so, the ultimate end result is that the broadband that's out there stopped using the amateur bands, which ultimately corrected the interference. Now, at this point, access BPL is dead on the vine, I think not only in the United States, but worldwide. The idea of trying to use those overhead power lines to conduct signals ranging up to maybe as high as 50 megahertz just simply is technologically not a good idea. I mean, if you could imagine taking an Ethernet cable, untwisting it, separating the wires by 10 feet, stripping off all the insulation, putting them up in the air 30 feet, and connecting them to all sorts of other noisy loads and devices That's access BPL. It simply can't work reliably. In fact, I've talked to a few of the utility guys who were trying it, and they told me one of their biggest challenges was keeping that up and running on a day-to-day basis. So that type of BPL that was potentially very dangerous to amateur radio because it involved miles of power line is essentially gone, both from an interference perspective, from a regulatory perspective. And one of the things I think happened is ARRL's pushing hard against this technology's interference delayed its implementation until better technology has passed it by. I mean, BPL ended up with roughly, at the top end when it worked, maybe a megabit per second to the end user, which by today's standards would be considered pretty slow. There's another form of BPL, though, that still is around, and that's called in-premise BPL. And industry specifications like HomePlug use the electrical wiring within a building to conduct signals along the AC wiring from one part of the building to the other. Now, that's actually a transmission line of sorts, a little bit leaky because you have a lot of loads and you have a lot of potential radiators on the line, but it can actually work to get a signal from one part of the building pretty well. Fortunately, the industry specifications for that from the get-go did not use the amateur bands, and one good example is with HomePlug. The last I saw, there were probably 25 million HomePlug devices deployed in the United States, and because they don't use the ham bands, ARRL has received 0 reports of harmful interference. So I think, as I said, we may have lost every battle, but we won the war, and broadband over power line at this point does not represent the threat that it certainly did, although we certainly would have liked to see better regulations.
So I saw a lot of videos, I think, in Australia and places that they were using this BPL, and sounded pretty bad. But you mentioned the ITU, so I guess there's some international regulations that go along with the with this type internet technology. Are a lot of the countries involved in it, or is the U.S. leading it?
Well, at this point, Tom, I don't know of any access BPL deployments anywhere. And so we are seeing some use of broadband over power line in buildings. Now, the industry is also looking at developing what they call the smart grid, where they're trying to use computer technology better to control the electric grid. And there are some signals being placed on power lines, mostly below 500 kilohertz, because they don't really need a lot of broadband. And a lot of that is to get from the pole into a house where they may be able to do things like control appliances. ARRL has a consultant who works closely with a number of the industry standards committees to help ensure that amateur radio is well represented on the table. Our biggest fear at this point is that when they start deploying smart grid, amateurs might interfere with it. And I think this would cause us some social problems we'd rather avoid. So one of the things we're doing now is we're doing some modeling for them to try to predict what kind of field strengths amateurs might generate so they can design immunity into their systems.
Well, that's a good point. Even though the frequencies are going to be so far apart, they're going to be up in the 30 to 300 gigahertz. You run an amateur radio signal down here in the house. Some power, 500,000 watts, and you may overload whatever type receiver or whatever they're using.
Yeah, and it's probably not much of a risk with the microwave on the AirGig. I mean. Generally, amateurs are not overloading the Wi-Fi in their own houses, for example. The separation of frequency is sufficient. But as that smart grid gets deployed and they start putting some signals onto some of the wiring, HF and VHF certainly could get in there. Of course, now you understand we're talking amplifiers, and I'm a QRPer, so we have to be very careful that we don't get Ed upset. I mean, you can see the QRP ARRL logo on my shirt. I may be ARRL, but I'm as much QRP and working with other groups within amateur radio as my own interests.
Well, my little experience in interference, I mean, I know that, if a ham rig can light up a 100 watt, 500,000 watt, 500,000 watts, and you may overload whatever type receiver or whatever they're using. I mean, you can see the QR PR ARRL logo on my shirt. I may be ARRL, but I'm as much QRP and working with other groups within amateur radio as my own interests.
Well,
a fluorescent tube away from it or something, it definitely can get into the worst places sometimes. One of the best things I think ever happened when I started in ham radio 52 years ago, nobody had cable TV. Everybody had the antennas, and we were 50, 60 miles from the TV station, so those TV signals were pretty weak. And boy, ham radio could really cause some problems in it. But now with the closed system, like the cable systems where they're closed, and plenty of level of a signal, we almost just don't have those problems anymore. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how this is going to work out.
Well, I have a feeling I'll still have a job. Interference problems certainly are going to continue, although you are right. The majority of interference we are seeing now is not amateur radio interfering with devices. This is for a number of reasons. Cable TV, again, it's a shielded system, it's a sealed system, and if nothing's wrong with it, it actually can screen out a lot of the external signals that might cause problems. As you said, they have strong signals delivered to the TV. And of course, digital television also has helped because up to a certain threshold where you start, pixelating, you can have some interference that doesn't show on the screen. And so between running digital, cable, DSL, some of the very high-speed digital signals are being used even on phone lines for television. We're not seeing nearly as much interference to devices from amateur radio. We are, however, seeing the flip side of that problem, and that's interference to amateur radio from devices. I mean, years back when you and I were first licensed, Tom, we didn't have switch mode power supplies. We didn't have computers. We had electric motors, we had power line noises, but for the most part, every single device made was not a potential interference source to amateur radio. And I think most amateurs would agree that noise levels are generally rising. That's another whole show we could do because the FCC has an open inquiry about noise. ARRL has been pretty heavily involved with that. So we're seeing interference to amateur radio from a number of devices, and a couple of them are rather interesting. One of the things that we've seen lately is we're seeing interference from some of the high-powered lighting controllers being used for various forms of indoor gardening. Now, it could be orchids, although in Colorado we're not so sure. But, we got reports of interference from some of the grow lights that were out there. ARRL bought one. In fact, it's kind of a funny story. We had a case out in California where there was some pretty strong interference. The amateur tracked it down to a house about a mile away. We had a consultant in the area that we sent out. Now, apparently the consultant spoke the same language as the farmer, so he knocked on the door and told him that he was able to identify what he was doing in the house just from the radio noise. The farmer was a little concerned. He ultimately, after some discussion, sent that lighting controller through the consultant we had to ARRL, and we measured it. We found it to be 58 dB over the FCC emissions limits. Now, let me translate that into layman's terms, because we're hams. We know we think we know dB, but 58 dB means that one device was making as much radio noise as 650,000 legal devices. So we're seeing a lot of noise coming from things like that are not necessarily regulated. We're seeing potential interference from solar panels. We're seeing, questions at least raised about LED street lighting. So I think ARRL will be kind of busy for a while helping amateurs deal with interference problems. And of course, we're looking for reports. When we get interference from, say, LED street lighting, if we don't get a report, if we can't get some information about what bulb is it that they're putting in, we're not able to necessarily find and identify every RFI problem. I think Zach Lau, one of our engineers in the lab, did a study, and he says that online on the Walmart site, he identified some 10,000 electronics products being sold by Walmart. Well, there's no way we can test them all, so we really truly do need interference reports about what's causing problems to amateur radio. We'll go out and buy them, we'll test them. If we find them to be over FCC limits, we'll initiate complaints. If not, we have some idea of where they stand from the regulatory point of view, and we can then better help amateurs deal with it.
Well, Jerry, W8RLM, he's talking about his remote control meter on the back of his house causes interference on some of the bands. He's going to ask the utility company to remove it and reinstall the original meter. Are you guys seeing any interference caused by meters?
You know, it's funny. I mean, there's a lot of those smart meters installed right now, and we have relatively few reports. I think at this point we might have heard from 2 or 3 people. And so this is a good sign in one sense. This means not every one of them is making noise. But I certainly would suggest that he may want to send an email to RFI@ARRL.org reporting what he has, what kind of problems, model numbers, and let's see what we can do. If we can find a few of these models generating interference to amateur radio, we can sometimes be effective both from a regulatory perspective. We can often build on our contacts with industry, IEEE, and often we're able to affect some results. Not always instant, not always overnight, but we have to start with actual reports when there's truly an interference problem.
So how do you guys get the equipment to test? Are the manufacturers pretty easy to deal with and send you something, or maybe some others
I don't
don't
want
want to
that
talk
at
to you?
If I get a report that a given product is causing interference, I'm going to spend some of our members' money and go off and buy one. I think we spent like $600 when we bought the first round of grow lights because we didn't want to have the manufacturers send us something gold-plated.
Right.
Sure enough, we found problems, and it's well worth doing. I mean, I remember when the LED bulbs first came out. Amateurs, of course, were very concerned. These are devices that actually have switching mode power supplies in them. So we went off to all of the big box stores and bought all the ones we could find at the time. We tested them and found the majority of them were actually in compliance with the FCC limits. And a lot of hams tell me, of course, they have LED bulbs in their houses without destroying amateur radio. This is potentially good. We have a lot of solar projects going in. We're not receiving interference complaints from every one, but there's a few out there. We have some model numbers. We're going off now and doing some testing, and we're going to start to see where those stand as well.
So, yeah, when you find something like a specific model of these grow lights that are generating that much interference, what's usually the outcome?
Well, it can vary, Tom. I mean, in the case of the grow lights, where something was so egregiously over the FCC's limits, clearly the manufacturer, it was manufactured in an Asian country, did not comply with the rules. It had FCC marks and CE marks all over it, so it should have complied. So it complied. So in that case, we chose to file a complaint directly with the FCC just because it was so egregiously bad. Now, interestingly, the commission didn't do much with that complaint, but we did hear from the major distributor of this product who was concerned about the interference. Apparently, this is because their customers do not want an easily identifiable RF noise signature coming from their houses. And so they redesigned the product. They sent us test results on another one, and I looked at the test results. They just didn't look right. Excuse me. So we went off and bought one, of course, and we measured it, and this one actually complied. But the test results looked dramatically different than the results they'd sent to us, rather. I have no idea what test report they gave us, but fortunately the good news was the interference was at least now within the FCC's limits. Now, those limits are pretty high. They can still cause interference. Well, this company went one step farther, and they designed RF filters that their customers can buy that would eliminate the grow light problem. So the FCC may not have acted directly, but indirectly we found a positive response in that case from the manufacturer.
Now, that was a RF filter that went on the glow lights?
Yeah, it went on the, there were 2 filters actually. One of them went on the AC mains to go on the controller to make sure it wasn't putting out any power onto the AC line. The other was a second filter that went from the output of the controller up to the lights to make sure that those lines weren't radiating. I mean, they wanted to resolve interference, probably more for their customers than for ARRL's complaint, but we took it any which way. Now, in other cases, Tom, we had a problem where we started getting reports that amateurs were tripping ground fault circuit interrupters. Amateurs, in some cases, 10 watts of power was tripping their neighbors' breakers. This was not a good thing. Now, there's no rules violation taking place there. The FCC has no immunity limits, but the hams, of course, their neighbors were a little bit concerned. Amateurs were concerned about, well, what if I trip my neighbor's freezer breaker while he's on vacation? And so we went off and bought one each of all of the circuit breakers we could find. We built a fixture. We installed it at W1AW. And what we found is one model of one manufacturer, the Eaton Corporation, was tripping with about 10 watts of power over at W1AW. Well, we knew Eaton from the broadband over power line days. They were one of the companies we worked with effectively. So when we contacted them, they know who we are. They know we work with IEEE and other groups. So we're not just a bunch of ham radio guys. And so they were very concerned. They sent 2 engineers to Connecticut to take a look at this. And within a matter of weeks, they had redesigned their breakers. Now, they made what I believe to be a slight mistake, and they didn't, they wanted to use up existing stock and continue to make them until the new design came out. I think that's potentially going to give them some problems, but at least it was a positive response. Now, if every manufacturer who had a report like this acted that effectively and quickly, I think overall we'd be pretty pleased, even if it wasn't exactly the solution we would have liked.
Well, I put a phone number up at the top of the screen, 901-286-1116. If you'd like to call in and talk to Ed, if you got a question out there or comments about the show tonight. I was reading here where Doc in here was talking about he's got an alarm system in the house, like just about everybody does nowadays, and when he runs any power on 80 or 40, it makes his alarm system beep. Now, at my previous house, I also had an alarm system there, and if I ran 600 watts, it would actually set my alarm off. And the problem is, on my alarm systems, even though they were off, for the daytime, you can't turn the fire off. So it would always call the fire department. So, but I had a wire that went over the roof of the house, and it had a wireless receiver for this alarm system kind of up in the top of the house, pretty close, I guess, to the antenna. And I moved that antenna to the backyard, not over the house, and it cleared my problem up. I was still afraid every time I'd key up, but it did clear the problem up. So it's just a manner of reducing that interfering signal by so many dB, and at some point you can probably do some good.
Oh, absolutely. And alarm systems, we've had some complaints about amateurs either tripping their own or more rarely their neighbors. I mean, fortunately the distance between most amateurs' antennas and their neighbors is sufficient that you're not looking at some of those very high field strengths like you were talking about in your case. Most of the time, though, when you have something like an alarm system, you have sensitive devices hooked up to great big long wire antennas, called all the wiring running around the building. And the cure, of course, is either, as you discovered, move the antenna farther away, become a QRPer is another option, and you can often put ferrite chokes on a lot of the wires that are leading to that alarm system, and if they have active sensors, you might need one on both ends. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done. I mean, some of on my own house, for example, we have smoke detectors. They're all hardwired together. The only place to put that ferrite choke would be on the AC wiring between the smoke detectors. Well, you can't just put a clamp-on bead on 80 meters and expect it to be very effective. You need a core with a number of turns of wire. Well, that's a monstrous core. I couldn't get a lot of turns of the Romex wiring onto it. And of course, I don't have the slack in the wires to do it. And that's not something you can do for a neighbor's installation. You do not want to start putting tearing apart your neighbor's electrical systems under any circumstances.
Well, yeah, I tried the same thing. I had ferrite. I must have had 50 ferrite clamp-on beads all over my my house over there. They really didn't. They weren't effective. Now,
well, they'd be effective on VHF.
Yeah.
In fact, if you put the number of ferrite beads onto a wire that you would need to make a bead balun for an antenna, that can actually work. But on 80 meters, typically that's about 40 beads, and at $3 a piece, and you'd need to do that for every wire, potentially do that for every wire. That can be a very expensive proposition.
Yeah, and I've also found, and maybe some people may or may not know this watching the show, but on these ferrites, that open up and they close, you put the wire through it and you close it. The more times you put a wire through there, you can loop the wire through 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The more you run the wire through there, I think you get more rejection, don't you?
Yeah, you do. In fact, that's what you need on the HF bands is you need a ferrite core, or even the split, the ones you can take apart, and you need a number of turns of wire. Now, there's a point of diminishing returns. I know of a couple of amateurs who've done some studies that kind of say, well, for any given frequency and core in a laboratory environment, what's the optimum number of turns? But of course, put that into the real-world environment where you're putting this in a system of unknown impedance at that point with all sorts of other resonances. That exact formula that says, well, 12 turns of wire is best on 40 meters, for example, wouldn't necessarily apply perfectly in the real world. What we generally recommend to hams is that they use the correct ferrite material. Typically number 31 now is your best bet. Number 43 type can also work. And typically about 10 turns of wire is a good place to start.
All right, here's a question. We've got a lot of shy people again. So far, no one's calling the phone, but there are questions in the chat room.
Well, just pass them on to me. I'm not looking at this
Is there a website that shows known manufacturers, model numbers, or that have RF issues?
No, unfortunately, there isn't. And one of the problems, I think, Tom, is that twofold. Is, we are looking at hundreds of thousands of electronic products out there. And there's no way in the world that ARRL could have the resources to test them all. We generally only hear from hams who have problems. More often than not, we don't get model numbers associated with those complaints. I mean, I'll have a ham tell me, oh yeah, my neighbor had a noisy LED bulb that caused me S9 noise, and so I went off and I bought a good one, and we threw the other one away. We don't know what it is. And of course, amateurs don't usually contact ARRL to say, I'm not getting interference from a particular product. And even if we were to develop some of that information, 3 years from now, it's all obsolete. There's a whole new spate of products. As good as it sounds, I don't think that's something that can practically really happen.
Speaking of interference, back when we started 50 years ago, there wasn't anything in the house that like you have today. Today you've got you've got microwaves and TVs and
you have
everything.
Microprocessors built into everything.
Everything.
You have switch mode power supplies. In fact, I saw an advertisement for a computer-controlled AC outlet box, and I says, "Oh, great! Now I can get interference from my neighbor's extension cord." So,
yeah. Well,
there's certainly a greater potential for interference to and from than there was 50 years ago.
I think some of the biggest interference, we'd get 50 years ago if a 57 Chevy drove by or something like that, Yeah,
and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And of course, I think probably though, the number one interference problems amateurs are seeing right now comes from power lines. If an amateur is in an area where the power is clean, he doesn't have noise. If something goes wrong, some utilities are absolutely great at fixing it. There's no doubt. Others, it can take years and years and years sometimes to get them to try to resolve a problem.
Yeah, Ron says, I think he's talking about back in the olden days, just a vacuum cleaner. He said it upset the radio, the TV, the dog. But it was so noisy. I don't think the interference was a big deal. Your mom coming here and run that vacuum cleaner while you're trying to ham. That didn't work very well. Hey, let's see, another question. Tell us some of the other things that the ARRL lab does. What do you guys work on there?
Well, I think that could be a show all by itself,
Okay.
Because I have a nice PowerPoint that I put together that talks about the ARRL laboratory. I call it Tall Tales, Trials, and Tribulations. And let's just say in that PowerPoint presentation, Tom, people will learn about some things they will not read about in the pages of QST.
Wow.
The laboratory, of course. I can give a quick overview. We're pretty famous for our product review testing. Every amateur who looks at a piece of gear will usually read the product review. And, we have Bob Allison. He's the one who does the videos on product review as well, test the majority of these radios. We have an RFI guy, Mike Gruber, Whiskey 1 Mike Golf. Now, I can't convince him to get K1 RFI. For some reason, Mike thinks W1MG is a pretty good call for him. We have Zach Lau, of course. He's kind of our technical genius in the lab. Whatever it is, Zach knows about it.
Well, he probably wouldn't want K1 RFI with W1 RFI working there. He probably just wouldn't want that.
Well, and for some reason, Mike Gruber thinks W1MG is just right for him. I'm not sure, but so that comprises the core of the engineers. We also have 3 or 4 volunteers who come in and do various things to help out as well. And the other thing that's important, I think, is that ARRL is doing a lot of work with industry, with the FCC. There are decisions made every day at a lot of these industry standards meetings, a lot of these, the standards boards. And as you mentioned earlier on the show, we not only have seats for amateur radio at these tables, we have seats at the head of the table. We're doing some effective work with these groups, and they reward effective work by putting people in a leadership position. So I serve on the board of directors of the EMC societies, their board. That's important. I serve on a number of ANSI committees. I serve on the IEEE's EMC Society Standards Board. So we're doing some very powerful work, which means when we contact manufacturers about problems, we're not just a bunch of ham radio guys. These are IEEE leaders contacting them, and that makes a big, big difference.
Yeah, and what we talked earlier, you're not the RFI guy, right?
No, actually, the guy who handles most of the RFI cases is Mike Gruber, W1MG. My RFI work is continued, and by the way, I forgot to mention that my call is a vanity, if anybody can think of the cute phonetics for it, please let me know. I've had a few suggestions, or a really fine individual, or when I post on QRZ, it's a real flaming idiot and a few variations on that.
Well, there's probably all kinds of things we can think of for it. Joe K0NEB said hello and asked
hello, Joe.
What project you're working on now. Any specific thing? We've got a caller.
It's funny. As years back, the lab used to do a lot of design work, where we would design projects for QST or the handbook. And I can think years back, I did a frequency counter for the handbook that took several months to develop from start to finish. This is a beautiful project, nice case, printed circuit boards, and the next year the manufacturer discontinued all the parts. And so having lab guys, spend a lot of time doing projects like that is not a very effective use of ARRL's resources. We have people who are out there designing projects. They would be delighted to have one of them appear in QST or the handbook. So a lot of my work, again, is doing some of the engineering studies we need, measurements of noise, working with IEEE, working with other groups. In fact, we're having coming up in October here in Connecticut a couple of broadcast technology symposia, and we'll be presenting at those. We'll be out trying to meet some of the broadcasters, trying to get a little bit more alliance going on some of our interference problems.
All right, we've got a caller on the phone. Let's see, who's a caller? Hello, caller. He's been holding 1 minute and 47 seconds. Hello on the phone. Hello. I hope he's not listening on the webcast. If he is, there's quite a...
This is Ricky, KB5ZMY, Fort Worth, Texas. I just wanted to tell a story about what happened to me in RFI problems.
Okay, Ricky, I think we're hearing you good. We got Ricky, KB5ZMY in Fort Worth, and he's got a RFI problem, or he had one. What happened, Ricky? Ricky, go ahead.
I'll bet you're dealing with that 20-second delay.
Yeah, he's listening on the webcast. Okay. There you go. Go ahead, Ricky. Ricky, are you there?
Well, back in the 90s, I guess it was early 90s, I was living in an apartment here in Fort Worth, and they came in and changed out all the cable in the whole city and was putting in fiber optic cable, a major company, and they put it in, and then right after they put it in, my VHF radio, every day I could pick up cable over my VHF radio every day. I'd call them and complain about it. They come out real fast, and before I could get out the door to talk to the inspector, they'd always get in their vehicle and run off because they'd see that their cable was working fine. They didn't care about what I was talking about. And finally, I had to call someone who knew who to call in the FCC to get them to fix it. And what it was is all their system that they put in, all that new stuff they put in was not grounded at all. It had no shielding and grounding, and it was just bleeding out everywhere.
Well, I was going to say a closed system. It must have been leaky or something. Did you hear that, Ed?
Yeah, I did, and yeah, he's correct. These cable systems, for the most part, when they work well, they work well. There are certain leakage limits on cable systems, and of course, if they do exceed the leakage limits, they need to correct it. They'd also need to correct it if it causes harmful interference to a licensed radio service. Now, again, building on that industry contact, one of the things we do have is contact with one of the people who serves on the board of directors of the Society of Cable Television Engineers. And if there is a problem with cable, most of the time the local systems do the right thing. If they don't, this gentleman, Ron Haranek is his name, makes a phone call to one of the senior people of the cable company, and they usually then are able to realize the importance of fixing this, and they go ahead and work on it, and usually are able to straighten out the problems.
Well, Ricky, I'm glad they found the problem. How long did it take them to fix your problem? Ricky's listening on the webcast instead of Skype, or instead of his phone. Ricky, are you there?
Well, that's been more than the 20 seconds. He may have dropped out. But
and finally, I had to talk to somebody who knew somebody at the FCC, and they called them and talked to them, and finally got them to almost find the major cable company, which is still in business, a major cable company. And if it had been for them almost getting fined, they would have never fixed it. All they cared about was as long as their customers had perfect cable, they didn't care about anybody else in the neighborhood who were getting any interference.
Well, Ricky, when you transmitted, more than likely you were also leaking into the cable system.
Exactly.
And so often that interference problem is one that gives them reasons to want to fix it.
Yeah. Well, Ricky, thank you so much for calling in. We're going to go ahead and see if anyone else wants to call in real quick. 73 down here to Fort Worth. All right, the phone line's open, 901-286-1116. Give us a call.
Right. And by the way, if they have questions, Tom, if I know the answer, I'll tell them. And if I don't, I'm going to make up something I'm pretty sure they're going to believe.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. All right. Well, boy, it's been interesting, and I was reading the comments in the chat room. People are very interested in the topic tonight. Now, maybe we can have you guys on again, maybe next month or so, and talk about a different thing that you guys are doing there at the ARRL.
Well, I'd love it. In fact, I can think of a number of topics that I think could be somewhat interesting. Maybe coming back more specifically to RFI problems and solutions. Mike Gruber and I, and maybe even a few of our volunteers, could certainly come in. We could have a real panel of people. Now, sometimes you're going to get different answers from different experts, but one of the things I think is important is ARRL makes a lot of use of volunteers. When that RFI book was put together, we had about 8 or 10 outside authors who did a lot of the work for us. And so gathering expertise, I think, is one of the strong points. I'd also love to do a presentation on the ARRL lab, just talking a little bit about what it's like to work there, some of the stories, giving a real overview of what we do rather than the quick one I did tonight.
We would love to have you do that for us. I'll get back with you later after the show, and we'll talk about when we can get you back in here, and maybe we can pick some other subjects. But, you were talking about, depending on who you talk to there, you might get different answers. But, there are different solutions that fix the same problems.
Absolutely, and everybody has their own techniques as well. In fact, one of the presentations I do when I go off to conventions is I'll often do a 1-hour stump the speaker session where people try to think up questions I can't answer. So we can have some fun with that.
We can. Okay, well, Ed, anything you want to say to wrap up this? I think we had a good discussion, and I really enjoyed having you guys on tonight.
Oh, I'm pleased to be here. Yeah. I mean, it was when Sean contacted me about this and said, well, he'd like you to be on the show. It was to talk about AirGig, and I figured, well, okay, I'll have a little 10-minute segment, and that'll do it. But apparently, I was a little bit more. A little bit broader than that. It was
okay.
Nice to be able to talk about BPL, about some of our work with IEEE, and I think we covered a lot of ground here today. It was worth doing. So I've enjoyed it. It's a little bit late at night for me, so if you and I are going to get together, I might suggest perhaps a little bit later in the week.
Sure.
Tomorrow and Thursday, I have a lot of things I really need to get done. But maybe if you give me a call Friday, we can try to firm something.
Oh, I'll call you in a few days or next week. I got your number. We'll get in touch with you. Yeah, this show is not over. It gets real crazy. In about 15 minutes, we go to Hangout, where we actually invite people to join the show. We can have up to 10 people come on the show at one time with video using a Hangout. And, when they talk, they go full screen. When the next person talks, it's kind of like sitting around the coffee table, and we talk about anything and everything, believe me. So
I might stick around for a while at least and watch some of that.
Well, you'll need to watch it on the webcast then. Just go to w5kub.com and watch it, because I'm going to drop you off Skype here in a few minutes and bring up Hangout. That's the unit I use to bring everybody in. But there will be people joining us, and hey, I don't know if you've got a Gmail account or something, Google account. I'm sure Hangout will work for you. All you got to do is click on a link. We're gonna put a link in the chat room, and Kathy, you want to go ahead and put the link in the chat room, please? She's got earphones over there and not hearing me for another 20 seconds.
Yeah, we've had that problem earlier. So.
Yeah, so we're gonna put a link in the chat room, and all you gotta do is click on it, and you'll be able to come right into the show with up to 10 people. Again, we're sitting around drinking coffee and smoking cigars and whatever the guys want to do. Ed, thank you very much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I've appreciated the opportunities to talk a bit about my work, and I'm sure we'll talk in the future.
All right. Thank you. Save me through to you, and we're going to have you guys on again soon.
Oh, yeah, well, and maybe more than just me, too. So have a good evening, and thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks. Okay. Let me get my Hangout started here. Let's see. Kathy? Okay, she's sending it out now. So, all right, let me log off of this. And we'll be getting on here in just a minute. Oh, another thing we've got tonight, guys, I want to talk briefly about this. We've got something coming up on a show next week. And we've got a problem here in this country with veterans. There's about 22, my understanding is there's about 22 suicides per year with veterans coming home and they have PTSD. And there's a ham radio event coming up to help these veterans try to have a little bit happier life and you know, get rid of some of that depression. So next week we're going to have with us Bob Hawkins, KD5AT, and we're going to be talking about Camp Hope. Camp Hope is coming up here real soon. It's going to be discussing the PTSD and what ham radio can do and what they're planning on using ham radio for these veterans. I think it's going to be interesting. I think Katie will be back with us next week, and she'll be in the discussion. I've got a little video that I got from Bob Hawkins about Camp Hope. Let me run that video real quick. There may be a little bit of audio problems at the first, but I think it comes through okay. So here it is.
Hey, Tom, Katie. Bob Hawkins here, KD5AT. Just trying to figure out the Texas QSO party on my SDR and just sitting there at the back porch with the dog. But on October 15th, we're going to be over at Camp Hope for the second annual K0 Delta special event. Supporting PTSD USA's effort to reach out to our soldiers with PTSD and help them recover back to normal life. Hams have a lot to do. They can where we can help those guys, show them our love, show them our affection, and bring them into our hobby. So more about that later, but look forward to talking with you about that on October the 4th. In the meantime, if you want more information about the K0 Delta event, please go to Facebook at Camp Hope ARC. Spell that out. That's one word. Camp Hope ARC on Facebook. We're soon to be launching the K0 Delta website, which I'll announce at a later time. It's in the works. And we're going to have if you're anywhere in the Houston area, we're going to have an awesome barbecue there. There's plenty of barbecue for everyone. Last year was 1,500 people there, and last year the K0 Delta station had about 67 contacts. This year we've got Texas A&M coming and the UT Amateur Radio Club's coming. Those guys are going to shoot it out for who can make the most contacts on behalf of K0 Delta. Look forward to talking with you on October 4th, Katie and Tom, about the event that's going to happen on October 15th. Bob Hawkins, KD5AT.
Okay. I think that was the end of the video. So, guys, I hope that gave you an idea. Camp Hope, they had it last year, and I think they fed barbecue to 15,000 people last year. It was it's a big event. So if you're in Texas down there, hey, drop by and visit them, eat barbecue. I think it's coming up in a few weeks. We're going to be talking about it. We'll be talking about it again next week on our show about Camp Hope and what ham radio is going to do for these military people that have the PTSD. Well, let's see what we got in Hangout here. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we got Bill in here, but Bill, you're the only person I see. Let me get Hangout on here.
Yeah, that's just it.
Boy, I tell you, it looks like you're the show tonight, unless somebody joins us. How you doing up in Massachusetts, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Got it right tonight. I didn't say Maine.
Oh, well, you're normally saying Monticello, Maine.
Yeah.
This is Amesbury, Massachusetts.
Yeah. Hey, that gives me I guess a hint, or reminds me. I'd just like to make an announcement about WBCQ real quick. We're on WBCQ radio on 9330. Again, if you're listening on shortwave, you can go to w5kub.com and join our video and join the chat room and watch the programs. Also, our programs are always recorded, so they're available, after tonight's show, they're available on our channel at any time. But I wanted to mention WBCQ, great bunch of guys up there. Alan Wiener, the owner, and Lord Robert up there is the program director, who's in their chat room, and I know many people are starting to get to know Robert in the chat room there. He's the one that puts that audio into the transmitter up there every Tuesday night for us on 9330. We really appreciate it. And guys, if you want to have your own radio show, contact Robert up there. Send an email to wbcq@wbcq.com, and they've got a number of shortwave frequencies, and they can put you on. You can have your own show for about $25 an hour. That is really, really cheap. If you guys would like to, running a special right now, $25 an hour will get you on your own radio program. So give them a call, shoot them an email, or whatever. All right, so now we've got another person. We got Mike join us. Mike is up in the Upper Peninsula. Hey, Mike.
You betcha. Yeah.
All right, so we've got Mike on. We got up in the Upper Peninsula. Oh, wait a minute, Upper Peninsula. What state's that? Michigan. Wisconsin, Michigan. I don't remember.
He's in the UP.
Where's the Upper Peninsula?
The Upper.
Well, that's let's see, that's okay. I know it's isn't it the state that's shaped like this? Isn't it?
Yeah,
isn't that Michigan? Is that Michigan? I'm gonna have to look at a map.
Yeah, put me up here.
All right. What
You
state?
need two hands to make Michigan.
All right, verify the state. What state?
You got the Lower Peninsula right there.
Okay, what state are we talking to here?
Michigan.
I thought it was Michigan. I was right. I thought I was right. Okay. All right, so we got Michigan on here tonight. We got Bill up in Maine. Now, Massachusetts. I saw Ed Hare from ARRL Labs. He just joined in the chat room. Maybe he'll click on the link. Kathy, you want to send a link one more time? Yeah, in case Ed didn't see it there. The mitten is the lower. The mitten? Yeah, it's the lower.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's in the upper.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. You'll get it straight yet.
All right, so let me get you guys back on here. There we go. So where's Doc tonight? I just want to talk to Doc. I saw Doc.
He was in the chat room.
He is in the chat room. Doc, if you're listening. Doc, if you're listening. Oh, there's Jill. Jill popped in. Look at her. Jill popped in. Hey, Jill.
You'll get it straight.
Hey,
yeah, Jill knows where I'm at.
How you doing, Jill?
I have to say this.
Where's Doc tonight? I just want to talk to Doc. I saw Doc. He was in the chat room. He is in the chat room. Doc, if you're listening. Doc, Jill,
you got your webcast going.
Jill, you've got to turn down the audio on the webcast. Go to the little video player. Go to the video player, and down in the corner, click mute the audio.
What the?
Okay, I think she got it. There you go. Perfect.
There it is.
Yeah. So wait a minute. So I'm waiting on Doc to come in. I've got a lot of medical questions for Doc tonight. Boy, I tell you. Hey, I'm doing pretty good, man. You know, I've been eating 3 meals a day instead of 7. So, you know, I was going to give Doc a report. You know, I think I'm doing better. Jill, you You've only been in here a time or two.
I have to say this.
What?
The Upper Peninsula is in Michigan, Tom.
Michigan? What's the lower
It's in Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
This is Michigan.
Exactly.
This is the Upper Peninsula.
That's what I thought.
You see how it's set up?
That's Michigan. That's Michigan.
Yeah, but you gotta put your hand.
That's Michigan. And you got the upper peninsula up here, right?
Yes.
Okay, I knew that. Yeah. I
used to live here in St. Marie.
There you go, Tom. You got to
that don't now what you're showing me that don't make any sense at all. What you're showing me. Show me that again.
Oh, Doc's here. Look out.
Oh, did Doc come in? Doc is here. Doc is here.
Hey, Doc, we're discussing geography with Tom. Just so you know what the heck we're doing here, okay?
Well, let me adjust the camera a little bit here. Let's see. Hey, Doc, how you doing tonight, man? We missed you the last couple of nights in a hangout.
Yeah, I was doing some other things, but I did get to watch the show last week.
Well, good. Well, the only medical reports I can give you tonight, Doc, is things are going good, man. I've been eating 3 meals a day instead of 7. And, man, I've lost about 20 pounds, Doc.
That's great. I wish I could say the same.
I feel a lot better, too. Let me see if I can get my picture here, if I can figure out how to do this. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, that'll probably work, right?
Yep,
there.
We see you.
There we go. Okay, let me take the... Anybody want to call in? If you want to call us on the phone, call us at 901-286-1116. Jill, how you like that new radio you won?
I have not even turned it on yet. Well, yeah, I have. I just haven't done anything because I'm waiting to get my general tomorrow.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, crap.
Cool.
Oh.
Okay, there we go.
You could try 10 meters.
You didn't watch that. I just don't want to ruin it.
Well, hey, Jill, hey, guys, Jill and I both won an HF rig at the Huntsville Ham Fest. You believe that? I won the Yazoo and she won the Kenwood.
All right.
Yes.
But I don't have mine yet, Jill.
And I got a little bit of good news.
What's the good news?
I'm going to Hamcation as of a half hour ago.
You're what?
I'm going to Hamcation.
Oh.
I'm going to Orlando in February.
Cool. I've been down there once. But I would like to go.
I just booked my ticket.
Yeah, let me see. Something beeped here. Let me see what
I'm
beeped
ready
in
to
here.
go.
It's terrible when your smartphone beeps and clangs and you don't know what it is, right? Oh, well.
Hope it ain't a tornado.
No, the alarm comes on when it's a tornado,
Oh, okay.
I think this was like a hangout. Maybe somebody invited me to another hangout or something. All right, well, let's see. We got Bill and Doc and Jill and Mike. We need about 6 more people on here. Guys, click on that link in the chat room. Join us.
Yeah, I enjoyed your segment on the scouting last week. I'm sorry I didn't get in there after the show, but that was interesting to me because of my connections there.
Yeah, okay. I'd already forgotten what the show was last week. I think my brain is shrinking up from not eating.
Boy Scout Jamboree.
Yeah, that's what it was. That was a good show. Yeah.
Yep.
It was a good show.
Because Doc, you're pretty involved in the Scouts, aren't you?
Yep. Very much.
Yeah. Doc goes out and hikes with them, and he goes
I
out.
used to be a Girl Scout leader.
Girl Scout, that's good.
And I was a Cub Scout leader.
Hey. We're the older generation.
Yeah, I never did make it into Boy Scouts, so my son didn't go on. But our son was disabled, so My wife and I worked as for the troop, or whatever you want to call it, the den here for his years of that as the leaders that worked out. But he couldn't go on the Cub Scouts with his disability, so we didn't go any farther.
Well, yeah, and I remember, let's see, I, Tom Mellon, promised to do my duty to guide my country, to be square and obey the laws of the pack. I think that was the Cub Scouts.
Well, that sounds like what they swore me when they started at the police department.
All right. Good night, Robert. Good night, Robert. Lord Robert at WBCQ 9330 is signing us off right now. I'll go ahead and cut the audio off myself. All right. Well, Doc, VA1 DWG says you need a smoke shack out there so you don't have to smoke in your car. You got a little...
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Something?
If I ever build a house, I'll have me a little exhaust room fan and all that kind of stuff. But right now I've got the sunroof open. I've got the windows open. It's about probably 70 degrees out here. It's kind of nice out here tonight.
It's been cool here. The last few days it's been like 95, and then the next day it went down to 75. Went to
I got
75.
53 degrees here right now.
Yeah, so it's been cool here. Cool. It's been cool the last few days. It's 75, slight breeze, pretty nice.
Yep. Well, maybe
I miss living in UT.
Maybe the heat's over with.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I'll be in North Carolina. Let's see, November 1st that week. So Joe K0NEB is going to put a show on all by himself. So guys, be sure and tune in. November, is it the 1st or 4th? Whatever. November, I think it's the 1st. Tune in for Joe and. You
better get there. You better get there before then if you're going to get the leaves.
Get the what? The leaves.
Yeah, if you're going.
Oh, you mean if I see them? Yeah. Well, we're going to be over there the 1st for maybe a week or. Well, Kathy's going a couple days earlier. Probably spend about a week or so over there. We got some friends going with us, and then Kathy and I we're going to go back over. We're going. We got a home over in the Smoky Mountains, in North Carolina. So we're going to go. We're going to go back Thanksgiving. We're going to have Thanksgiving over there. Everybody's scattered this year.
Yeah, I love those mountains.
Yeah, probably going to go, what do you call it, where they hook you to the line and they...
Zip line?
Yeah, zip line. Probably go zip lining. They got some nice zip lines over there now.
That sounds like fun. I stopped in Gatlinburg on the way back from Huntsville.
Yeah.
I was there for a couple days.
Yeah, Gatlinburg's nice.
I gotta bug out. I gotta pick up my kid from work shortly.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you joined us tonight. I'm glad you were in here with us.
Good night.
Oh, yeah.
Good night, Jill. We'll see you. Checking out the chat room here, see what they're saying. I don't
How far
know.
from Bryson City are you, Tom?
Bryson City, gee, I don't know my geography. You know, when you get in the mountains over there, you don't know what direction nothing is. I think Bryson is south, maybe southwest. We're about an hour drive southwest of Asheville. The city above us, we're in Tuckasegee, and then the next biggest city is Cullowhee, and then the next bigger city north there is Silva, and then the next one north there is Waynesville.
Not too far away.
Yeah.
I get over to Bryson City lots.
I think that's where we went down to do rafting. I think we drove down there to actually do the rafting.
Do you come down 64 through Murphy and Andrews and?
You mean to Bryson? To Bryson?
Yeah, to your house. Or do you go up 40?
Oh, from here to go there, we'll take 40. We'll go all the way over, and we'll probably take the Maggie Valley exit.
Okay.
You know where that is?
Yep.
take the Maggie Valley exit, head south, and we'll hit Waynesville and Silva, going down that way. I don't know what the road number is.
Rochester City is about 15 miles from Silva.
You know, it's funny, man. I mean, even Interstate 40 over there, I didn't realize this. You can watch a GPS. You can be heading eastbound on I-40 and watch the GPS. You'll go eastbound. You'll go southbound. You'll even be going westbound on eastbound 40.
Yep.
Yeah, we got...
winds through there.
Yeah, we got Highway 41 that runs right from the north and here all the way to Miami. When it comes through our area, they actually go about 50 miles. You're going west, but it's still a north or south highway.
Yeah, same thing here. I mean, but man, why don't they just get a big bulldozer in those mountains and level a road out through there, man? I think they just got to follow the mountains. Okay, Jerry wants to know what kind of camera and equipment does he need? WB8 RQM, just a webcam. If you've got a camera in your laptop, that will work. Just click on a link.
All I've got is a little Logitech one put on the top of my monitor right here. That's all.
Yeah, just any kind of webcam. Any kind of webcam or the camera in your laptop, or and all you just click on a link and it'll bring you into the show. You need a microphone, and when
I've got an iPad.
Yeah, when you click on that, it'll bring up on your browser. It'll bring up Hangout, and I think you can configure. You can click on the settings and select your camera and your microphone input. But hey, if you want to join us, you don't have a camera, call us on the phone, 901-286-1116. The number's still up.
Yeah, if you don't have a camera, you can still join in. We just won't see you, that's all.
Yeah. Ben says all government contracts go the cheapest bidder. Well, I'll tell you.
No, that's what are they true? And they, just like the space shuttle, International Space Shuttle, you got to remember that thing's flying around in orbit up there on the lowest bidders.
I've asked Doug Wheelock about that a couple of times, about, how does he feel riding on something that's been built by the cheapest bidder? He's interested about going back up soon. He's hoping to ride one of the new SpaceX rockets or something, but he said, it might need to test it just a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to sit on top of one of those rockets.
They've had too many of those things blow up.
They have had several, haven't they? Oh, man.
Hey, Bill, you've been kind of quiet tonight.
Who?
Yeah, you've been kind of quiet.
Well, I just had to... I'm not falling asleep over here. Sorry. I just got this post from somebody on my Facebook, and I just had to reply to him. He was talking about some guy by the name of J.J. Watts out of Houston. And I said, yeah, well, he ain't playing no more. He re-injured his back, so he's out for the season. So I was just letting him know. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. And Doc, it's always nice to see you there, sir. I mean, one of these days I'm going to shake your hand in person. I missed you there in Dayton, and by the time I got there, you were gone.
Yeah, I came by a couple of times, but didn't spend a whole lot of time over there. Tom was too busy.
Well, I see Jerry made
Jerry
made a posting about I-75 in Michigan. Yeah, I drove downstate to Grand Rapids on I-75 back and forth a week ago, so I know what he's talking about. He's posted in the chat room there.
Haven't been to Michigan since,
Never been.
Well, you got to get up here to the UP.
I think I've been through there once. Maybe, I don't know. I
Well,
have to look
if you were in the Air Force, there was a place called K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base.
No, never made it
That
here.
was
Never made it here. Not for
not
that.
too far from his house.
Yeah, about 15 miles.
What kind of aircraft are based there?
They had B-52s mostly.
The B-52. Boy, that airplane's going to be around 100 years pretty soon.
Yep, they come over in the landing and they come over our house, and it's a good thing they had sometimes back then a remote control. You could turn the volume up on the TV when they came in for a landing just over the house.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the closest I've come to one of those was at the Air Force Museum, so that's a huge thing.
Yeah. Those in, what was it, F-15s, they had the fighter jets.
You know, when I was a kid, I built...
That base up here in New Hampshire, the name of the place was Pease Air Force Base. That was a SAC base, and they used to have the air shows and stuff up there. They brought even the Looking Glass. We got a chance to go in the Looking Glass and see what it was all about.
You know, when I was a kid, I built models. You know, I had hundreds of model planes and stuff, but I remember building like the B-47. I always thought that was such a big plane, you know, but when you look at that B-47 in person, it really wasn't that big of a plane. The little cockpit there only held a couple people.
Well, when that B-52 came over the house, it cast a shadow. Oh, yeah, they used to have air shows at K.I. Sawyer one time ago. Oh, and there's Doug saying he stayed in our train. Well, that's just about 30 miles down the road from me. See, look at all these people, Tom, that are on the chat room. They all know where the UP is.
Well, we've talked about it nearly every show. They should know where it is. I knew where it was. I just didn't remember the name of the state.
Yeah.
You must have failed geography, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting show tonight. I enjoyed the stuff about the RFI, and yeah, you know, I have this problem that every time I turn on my amplifier on 40 meters, my alarm goes crazy. So I've got to figure out. I think the problem may be that I have an upstairs ham shack, and I think that it's far enough above the physical ground that I probably need to get one of those RF grounds that MFJ makes.
You know, Doc, my shack was upstairs, but it was all the way in the other end of the house. But right about the center of the house, up in the top ceiling, second floor up there, they had a receiver because some of the wireless went through, some of the alarm gizmos went through a wireless unit up there. I guess it was, you know, some was wired, some was wireless. Anyway, I had I think I had a off-center fed antenna went right over the top of the house. It I bet it wasn't more than 10, 15 feet above that wireless box up there, and when I'd key up on 80 meters, it would turn the fire alarm on. And there's no way to turn the fire alarm off on a home security system. It stays on all the time. Yep. So I even had
set the alarm off. It just starts going beep 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 beep.
Yeah.
Beep, beep, beep.
Well, you're lucky.
Well, you get on 40. I've got a carbon monoxide detector just outside the door in the hallway up here.
Well,
for some reason, when I go to tune, if I go to tune the amp on, it'll set that thing beeping, which then sets the dog off.
Well, you guys are lucky because the fire department came out to my house.
Well, I don't have any alarms on the house.
So, and I I put all kinds of ferrite beads and everything everywhere I could, in the box, out of the box, on cables up in the attic. And I mean, the attic looked like it had an antenna stretched out, man. You know, they had this twisted wire for these alarms that they were just stapled down the rafters in the attic, and just it was like 20 or 30 just from end to end of the house. And when I moved the antenna off from over the top of the house to the backyard, my problem went away. And I don't know.
Tom, when you made contact with the fire department, did you get a QSL?
No, I didn't. You know, I told them I told them on the phone that they didn't have to come out, but they said they had to. So, you know, they pulled up right in front of the house. So I said hi to them and said, you know, hey, glad to see you guys. You know, when I was growing up, a little kid, in my little town of 1,000 people, my dad was a volunteer fire chief, and I went to all the fires and helped fill fire extinguishers and all that stuff. So I was glad to see them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's a job that I wouldn't want. We had a volunteer fire department in our town for many years, and I can remember that big siren on top of one of the buildings downtown. You could hear that thing all over town, and
yep.
And guys would jump in their cars, and I don't know if they'd call somebody to find out where they're going, or they just all go down to the station or what. But
well, that's the way. That's what it was.
They all got pagers. Yeah.
Back then we didn't have pagers, but that's the way it worked back then. In this little town of 1,000 people, like you say, there was a siren. You hear it in the whole part of town. And actually, the phone was on the wall at the only gas station in town. The gas station was open 24 hours a day. And when the siren went off, the volunteers would dial that number and ask where the fire was, and then they would go. And boy, I tell you, I went to a number of them with my dad, but you know, I tell you go to these houses where they're running old heaters and stuff, and it's 15 degrees below zero and ice everywhere, and they're burning down. It's cold out there, and I think they got $2 every time they went to a fire.
Yeah, our city is large enough. We've got a full-time fire department with 2 fire halls, but the surrounding townships have the sirens going off and they're paged. But yeah, years ago when I was on the police department, the city wanted to make us a public safety and combine us with the fire department and police department, and we fought it with unity. The firemen didn't want to go handle domestics and accidents, and I didn't want to go in running into burning buildings, so we didn't. So it never did go through.
I was in a burning building one time. That's not a fun place to be.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I was probably 14 years old. We just went down. We picked up my great-grandfather and great-grandfather. We're going to take them somewhere. And I looked back and looked through the windows of the house, and it was flames everywhere. And went into this business across the street there, tried to call a fire department. Couldn't get through to the fire department. They were having some trouble with the phone number then. So I called my dad, who was the fire chief, and he called I guess the other number that the firemen's called, and they turned the alarm on, and they all showed up. But I remember them getting there. That house was really under a blaze, man. I wouldn't want to go up on top of that house and chop a hole in the roof.
Yeah.
We
had a big fire going. I was happy to be on the perimeter, keeping people away while the firemen went in.
There was a depot across the street from my dad's store, and it caught fire one night, and we went down there, and it was burning on one end of it, and my dad had some space rented in the depot where he had a bunch of lawn tractors and garden implements and things like that. And so he said, get the keys and go over there and get as much of that stuff out as you can. So I got in there and started getting stuff out, and then the smoke started getting into that room, and first thing I know, I can't see where the door is. And
Oh, man.
I just held my breath as long as I could, and finally bolted for where I thought the door was, and wound up rolling out into the street. But it was kind of a scary proposition.
Oh, wow. I went to, out in the country, a house burned down. It burned to the ground, by the time they got out there. And we found out that it had a casualty in it. And I remember the guys putting the ashes pretty much out to get the body out. There wasn't anything left of the body. All I saw was a torso, basically.
Yeah, we had some guys in the city of Memphis when I was over there doing my internship at the city of Memphis Hospital that decided to set a mattress on fire one night at the jail. Not a smart thing to do, and they brought those two guys in. They had, I think those were the only third-degree burns I ever saw, but they didn't have. They were black as soot and just about as hard as a piece of charcoal. And there wasn't a thing we could do for them except just give them some morphine and wait for them to pass.
Wow.
That's too bad.
Well, guys, next week we're going to have a show about ham radio and PSTD. It might turn out a pretty good show.
Who?
PSTD.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
PTSD.
PTSD. What I say? Yeah, PTSD. I might have said PSTD on the show.
Oh, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Not just among troops, but in other things as well.
Oh, I've seen it in my 25 years in law enforcement. I've seen officers have drinking problems. I've seen officers, take their lives in different things. They just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I think a lot of first responder folks have that kind of difficulty. It's hard to insulate yourself against all those kind of things.
Oh, yeah. Well, you as a doctor, you've seen it. And there's stuff, what I've seen in 25 years, the average person does not want to have seen.
No. The first person I ever pronounced, I think it was the first person I ever pronounced when I was working in the city of Memphis Hospital, was a young nurse who had decided to take her own life. And I remember crawling up in this ambulance and to pronounce her, and I pulled the sheet back and I just about threw up. It was horrific.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to carry a small knife on my utility belt, and I had to get a larger one, 3.5-inch blade, just to when we came across some hangings to cut them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this girl was a nurse, and she was a pretty lady, but she had taken a 12-gauge shotgun, and most of her head was gone. So.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, I came across the car one time when the guy had the shotgun laying under his chin, and when I opened up the car door, shotgun was still laying by his neck, but there was nothing on top.
Yeah.
So that was a sight.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that you don't forget.
No.
I'd like to, but I can't.
Yeah. So everybody wonders why in law enforcement, age 50, 25 years, you guys take retirement. I said, yeah, we like to get out with a little sanity. Yeah, I don't know if you can see here. As you bring me up here.
Yeah. There you are.
Right. Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah, okay.
That looks pretty good.
Focus.
Yeah, you're on a donor cycle.
Yeah.
Now,
there we go.
How do you feel about riding that without a seatbelt?
I know. Just hang on tight.
Man.
You ever lay it down?
Not in I laid it down, but it's tipped over. But I've never had to lay it down in an emergency.
I had one. I was chasing rabbits out in the field one night. You know, a headlight on there chases rabbits real good out in the dark. Anyway, I think I hit a cotton row and I went over the handlebars.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call those things donor cycles because that's how we organ donors.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I was on that bike, when I was going lights and siren to emergency, you had to really be careful when you're approaching traffic or intersection. Because everybody was looking for a patrol car, an ambulance, a fire truck. So I had to make sure when I went to an intersection that all drivers in each direction saw who I was. Sometimes you almost come down to a creeping slow, okay, they all see me, and then go on through.
Yep.
And I remember when I was training for that, we'd have to run the course and through everything. And then when you ran the course once, then they had you run it again with the siren going. Because that's when you start getting the siren, that's when your adrenaline starts getting up, and to make sure you could handle it while you had your adrenaline going.
Wow.
How long did you do that?
I did that for the last 5 or 6 years. I was on the department.
How many years in total did you do police work?
25 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
There's the bigger one right there. The whole bike.
Well, the police are sure up against it today. I'll tell you, they've got more problems than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah. Yeah, I was road patrol the whole time I was on. So.
All these drug things around, and it's just I don't know. I mean, I see it from both sides. I think that a lot of times they want to shoot first and ask questions later, but I know that they fear for the lives too.
Well, see, when I was back in the 70s and 80s, I dealt a lot with marijuana, grass, pills, stuff like that. Now the officers got to deal with these meth labs. And when they come across the meth lab, they've got to call in the special detail guys with hazmat suits to come in and clean up. At least I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Those things can blow up on you too.
Oh yeah, we had a few. Matter of fact, there was something on the news this morning, or some house somewhere where it was just blew up to a big explosion. I don't remember what it was, but they were talking about it possibly being a drug, house, and they were probably cooking meth in it when it blew.
Well, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, I probably need to.
Thank you for
it's
coming
10
by.
o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. I think I'm gonna get out too.
7-3.
Good night.
All right,
Enjoy.
guys. We'll see you.
night.
All right. Good night.
Yeah, I think I'll do it too. It's going on 11 o'clock here, so.
Yep. Have a good. See you next week. Let's see if I can get out.
Okay.